Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Opening week in baseball is finally past, and the vibes have been electric. I have loved watching and listening to as many games as possible. There's been some heroic home runs, some amazing defensive stops, and a new change in the pace of play that I think has really helped the game and is a step in the right direction moving forward. Talking about my own fandom, I know all of you have been looking at your teams saying, oh, my team's off to a great start, my team's off to a bad start. Well, my team got swept by the Pirates. And while the Pirates have been off to an amazing start, historically, that's not a good thing for Red Sox fans out there. So I will continue to listen to Red Sox games and follow the season along, but the positivity that a lot of fans had going into the season, some even predicting them to be a wild card team, this is why I was not willing to go that far with the Boston Red Sox. A lot of players that are fun to watch, especially Masataka Yoshida, who has been a really welcomed addition to that lineup. But when it comes to guys that are in the starting rotation currently, I get some will be replaced later as James Paxton, Brian Bello, and Garrett Whitlock get healthy. But the Red Sox vibes aren't quite on par with the rest of baseball. I do think, though, as we see opening day rosters and guys making their major league debuts, getting their first hits, their first stolen bases, their first home runs, it's just something that we have to step back as baseball fans and really treasure those moments. It might be the first time you get to see someone do something. It might be the last time you get to see someone do something when you're talking about the greats of the game, like Miguel Cabrera, Clayton Kershaw. We don't know how many years they're going to keep playing. Miguel Cabrera, obviously, at the end of the year, will be retiring. But opening week is always a special time in baseball. I think there's a lot to be thankful for here. I think the World Baseball Classic is a big part of the reason we're getting such great competitive baseball early. Some of these stars have already been training and hitting against elite competition. And I think that the season will only continue to be bigger as the season rolls on. But as for now, every team is still currently in the hunt, and some teams are off to some amazing starts. So at first base, we're talking about who's hot and who's not in baseball. And I would be completely ill-advised the fact that I did not have the Tampa Bay Rays in my American League playoff picture, mostly because of the improvements of Seattle and Texas. But the Rays have been an amazing organization. They always find a way to win games, get more out of loose ends than anybody else in the game, and always pitch well. I'm a big fan of pitching, and their pitching has been so disgusting to start the season. Drew Rasmussen, Jeffrey Springs, Shane McClanahan. I expect this team to just go completely nuclear for this stretch while this pitching's healthy. And Wander Franco has reminded us who he originally was, the number one prospect in all of baseball. He's showing that pop in the middle infield, great speed, and great plate discipline. He's a guy that the pitch count has not affected at all. He works fast, and he's able to identify pitches out of the hand better than almost any young player I've ever seen. Tampa Bay Rays fans, I'm sorry for doubting you guys. Congratulations to being the only undefeated team in baseball as of this morning. Don't expect that to continue, but I do expect you guys to be a strong playoff contender. Who's not? We talked about him. Getting swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates gets you on the not list. My Boston Red Sox. Adam Duvall has looked like an amazing free agent signing. But if the Red Sox keep playing this way, Adam Duvall will be shipped off to a contender at the All-Star break. He's a guy that plays very good defense in center field and has more extra base hits than anybody in baseball. Rafael Devers is the face of the franchise. He's been great. And Kenley Jansen at the back of the bullpen has looked good. But the rest of that pitching staff has gotten lit up. And the amount of home runs that they've been giving up is kind of comical at this point. They need to just figure things out with the pitch clock. I don't know if they're not used to working this fast or if they're just not ready for the season. But this pitching staff, it's looking like a quadruple A team. I don't know if it's going to take Garrett Whitlock and Brian Bello and James Paxton down the line to square things away. I picked Chris Sale to be the American League Comeback Player of the Year. He got absolutely rocked in his first game. And what I love about Chris Sale is he went straight out to the media saying, some days you just suck. And that really matters. That honesty matters, but you need to start getting the results. Chris Sale's second start was definitely better, but gave up some runs in places where you wouldn't expect Chris Sale to do so. Who's hot? The Atlanta Braves. They have one of the best lineups in baseball, and a big part of the reason why is Ronald Acuna is back to his old form. Stealing bases, robbing extra base hits in the outfield, and just hitting monster towering shots. He is a true 5-tool player, and as long as the Braves have him in that lineup with Matt Olson, who's now shift-free, they're going to be just fine. I expect the Atlanta Braves offense to continue to be towards the top of the league, getting great production out of Orlando Arcia right now as their shortstop. And I expect when he eventually gets replaced by Vaughn Grissom, this team is going to be in great shape, getting an even better bat at a place that really isn't a weakness. Who's not? The Oakland A's. We talked about the improvements of Texas and Seattle. The Los Angeles Angels also look improved. I understand that the A's were able to actually win games against the Angels, but if you're looking at their prospects for this season, I expect the Angels' improved team to fare much better than the Oakland A's. And regardless, we're talking about 4th, 5th place here in the American League West. I know a lot of people joke that certain teams' seasons are over as soon as the season starts. I'm not going that far, but the Oakland A's, with this improved division, with the Astros still at the top, I wouldn't get your hopes up about anything I've seen out of Oakland and expect that some of these pieces that have looked good so far to not be there for the long haul. Who's hot? The Texas Rangers. First 2 games of the season, 27 runs scored. That was the most by a team in their first 2 games since 1906. What's crazy about that is in 1906, there was not 15 games played on opening day because there was not that many teams. So 27 runs in 2 games, that's fantastic. Jacob deGrom was the only thing that didn't look good to open the season when they swept the Phillies. And what does Jacob deGrom do in start number 2? He looks like vintage Jacob deGrom. Throwing heat, and for the 15 to 30 games that he'll pitch this season, I expect to get that deGrom more often than not. So the Texas Rangers especially are going to continue to impress people. I know a lot of people were shocked that I put them in my playoff picture, but I think that the money they've spent has been in wise places, and I truly expect this team to take the next step here. And I think sweeping the National League champs to open the season with great run prevention and run scoring ability has shown why I was so bullish on them. Who's not? The Cincinnati Reds, and that's very much for the same reason as the Oakland A's. You see improvement from the Cubs and now the Pirates, who look to have some electricity going. Brian Reynolds leads the league in home runs currently. O'Neal Cruz and Ke'Bryan Hayes have both looked good, and they've gotten surprisingly decent outings out of their pitching staff. If you're a Reds fan right now, I'm sorry. The Brewers have been outstanding to start the season. The Cardinals are a class act organization. There's not much hope for the Reds, and you don't even get Joey Votto to start the season, who's been on the injured list. This could be Votto's last season in the bigs, and for him to be coming back to a team with little to no hope, it's kind of a sad state of affairs for a city that truly loves baseball. And I hope that through Hunter Green and some of these young players, you get those glimmers of hope and a future that you deserve. Playing hot or not is really fun. You have the Dodgers in the National League who have surprised people by playing good baseball when that's all they've really done in the last decade. The Los Angeles Dodgers are a machine. And for me to leave them out of this conversation, I just think wouldn't be the right thing to do. When you have Mookie Betts and you have Freddie Freeman, you have Clayton Kershaw, you just figure things out. These are guys that are MVPs, are champions, and just know how to be professionals at the plate. They've been able to mix together their pitching staff into very successful outings, from one-year rentals like Noah Syndergaard and guys straight from the farm like Dustin May. This team, as much as you love to hate them, are just really good at baseball. They might not win the World Series, but they're going to be in the playoffs. And I think getting that production early in the season is a great signal towards that to the rest of the baseball world that started to doubt them when they lost the two Turners, when they lost Gavin Lux in spring training. This team is going to be just fine. And I think that being second in the league in runs scored is a pretty easy measure of that. And the final team to who's hot and who's not is a team that collapsed last year against the Atlanta Braves and now had a miserable series against the Milwaukee Brewers, and that's the New York Mets. I talked about it in episode 1. The Mets and Padres are both spending a ton of money on their baseball teams, and unlike the Texas Rangers, I believe some of the money was kind of just silly thrown out there. One of those two teams very well could miss the playoffs in place of the Brewers that have great pitching and have this young, exciting lineup. But go into Milwaukee, get destroyed in the first two games, and then to get walked off in the final game. It's okay for Mets fans to be worried right now. I don't think that this is going to be your entire season, but the fact that Justin Verlander goes on the injured list before he even pitches for your team, and having this miserable series against Milwaukee, which is a fringe wildcard team, isn't the best start for the Mets after a major season last year. I expect Max Scherzer to figure things out and anchor that staff and get things going in the right direction. But right now, if you're the Mets and you're hoping for Kadai Senga to be that number 2 starter, borderline ace guy, he looked good, but that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy that is brand new to the major leagues. That is who is hot and not. I know there's a lot of other teams that have had hot starts and had not so hot starts, but those are the 8 that I wanted to talk about today. The rule changes, though, yay or nay. And the first one that I didn't really touch on in episode 1 was that everybody plays everybody this year. And I think that is huge for the future of Major League Baseball. Playing everybody is fantastic. It's what every league that has this long of a season should be doing. It lined up so perfectly last year that my favorite player, Albert Pujols, was visiting Fenway on my birthday weekend, and the Cardinals were visiting Fenway for the first time since 2017. That's like a storybook lineup, and it was great for me to go see him one last time. But when it comes to an everyday baseball fan that might only go to one game a year, they want to see somebody that they don't normally get to see. And having those opportunities not be every 5 years, instead being every 1 to 3 years, I think that's a really great thing. So many more lifelong baseball fans will be made when they get to see Shohei Ohtani in person. They get to see Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Nolan Arenado. The list goes on of the amazing stars. And this is something that is important because in the NBA, you have a ton of games and people resting, but fans will go to certain games just to see one player. I think that is super big, getting to see these players in action and not having to wait years or travel state lines constantly to do so will help grow the game in a better way. So I am a yay to everybody playing everybody. When it comes to the shift, I think it's a nice change of pace to not have infielders 10 feet into right field. And I think that we're going to continue to see who's a great defender and who was protected a lot by the shift. There's been some tough plays already that have been made by really nice defensive plays, and some that would have used to been automatic outs that have turned into base hits. And I think that is kind of what's added with the shift being restricted. You will see a ton of players really having to work defensively and a ton of guys getting base hits through the infield, which has not been common over the last couple years as the shift has dominated the game. So I am a yay to the shift being restricted. When it comes to the bases being bigger, I think that is in tune with safety and there being more room for the base runner and defender to work with. But also, when you have a pitch clock, the pitcher is only able to throw over to first base twice before there being a potential balk. You're incentivizing stolen bases. And there have been a lot of stolen bases. There was 21 on opening day in 23 attempts. And I expect there to be plenty of guys that go 20-20 this year and more 30-30 guys than we've seen since the steroid era. And that is a pretty amazing feat in a game that is craving more action. So I'm a big yes to the bigger bases. But when it comes to the pitch clock, I've listened and watched to a few games now. Spring training, it was a little hard to gauge. The games were shorter, but the level of competition and situations were a little different. I think the pitch clock isn't quite where it needs to be. I don't know if they need to add a few more seconds in certain situations, but the pitch clock has shortened games immensely, makes it more digestible, like I try to do with this podcast. But there's something about it where the ability to take in the game is suffering a little bit. There was a great moment with Andrew McCutchen getting his standing ovation in Pittsburgh for the first time in many years. That was beautiful. And I'm glad that the umpire didn't call him for a pitch clock violation for taking his time to bow to the crowd and take that moment in. But there's been a few moments so far where at-bats have been a little bit rushed, and it's been noticeable. Innings have went by a little faster. Announcers haven't been able to finish their stories that they've done for different pitchers and hitters, and innings have went by in the blink of an eye. Baseball is a slow burn, and I think it's hard to market a slow burn when there's no clock. So I think the pitch clock is necessary, but I don't think it's where it needs to be yet. So I'm kind of leaning nay for the current iteration of the pitch clock, but I do think the idea of adding a pitch clock is necessary for the game's digestibility and growing more fans with the attention spans that we have in today's media. There's so many different things to distract us and to pull us in many different directions. So appreciate you guys that tune in and spend your time listening to me. When we come to third base, we throw it back to a time in baseball history that is important for many different reasons. Last week, I touched on Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale ending their holdout and signing big contracts, which were integral in the start of a collective bargaining agreement for the players. And while there was many birthdays and big events that I could talk about with baseball on April 8th, there was none bigger than Henry Aaron breaking the all-time home run record on this day in 1974. Fourth inning, off of Al Downing, at a full house of 53,775 fans at the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. He got to do it at home on national television with his mother in attendance. And I know in baseball, the numbers and the records, they just seem to mean a little bit more than other sports. But this one was just huge for many reasons. And I think that Hank Aaron breaking that record was a symbol of baseball turning over a new leaf and truly showed the greatness of Hank Aaron, because he's had many threats on his life as well as his family, for people that were begging him to retire after the 1973 season to not break Babe Ruth's record. But as a black man in the Deep South, Hank Aaron went out there every day as he did for the 20 years prior, and he broke that record. And he didn't just stop at 715. He went 40 more to 755 to set the all-time list. It was magical, and it saddens me that Hank Aaron is not here today. A true baseball icon and legend. We are so blessed to have a ton of his career on tape and many interviews of him talking about his fantastic career. But we do have a living member in Dusty Baker, who was actually Aaron's teammate on deck during that 715th home run. There was fans storming the field, and Dusty Baker's just staring at Hank, who outshines everybody else in that moment. And when Hank hugged his mom after hitting that home run, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. When Barry Bonds broke Hank Aaron's record, it was a big deal because Hank Aaron was baseball royalty. And while many people will have problems with Barry Bonds for his alleged steroid use, we can all respect and cherish the journey that Hank Aaron made from home run number 1 all the way till 715. The new mark was set, and for many years, he was the home run king. To some people, he still is today. Couldn't think of a better person to throw it back to on Throwback Thursday. He wore 44, which many of you could tell, but my Twitter handle is my lucky number. I wore that in high school. And there's not a better 44 out there than Mr. Hank Aaron. And talking about legends, I bring you to home plate and challenge you to appreciate the veterans. And I'm not just talking about our servicemen and women. I very much appreciate them and hope that we all give them the credit and love and thanks that they deserve. But I'm talking about the veteran players that we have in today's game. Miguel Cabrera is in his final major league season. Had his final opening day and threw out the pitch alongside Calvin Johnson and other Detroit sports legends. That was awesome to see. And I hope if you get a chance to watch Miguel Cabrera in action one last time this year, or for your kids the first time to do it this year. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, maybe the last player to ever hit for the Triple Crown. Then you got Clayton Kershaw, who squared off against Madison Bumgarner again. Clayton Kershaw is only signed on for this year, and I would not be shocked if he does not come back next season. He's playing it year by year right now. Clayton Kershaw, 3-time Cy Young winner, MVP as a pitcher, one of the best pitchers of this era. Go and check him out if you get a chance. If the Dodgers are coming to town or playing nearby, you're not going to regret watching greatness. The same goes for guys that are locked in for the next couple of years but are still getting up there in age. Justin Verlander, Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, Max Scherzer, Zach Greinke. I know Trout and Ohtani are younger than those guys, but with what they're doing to their bodies, there's only so many more years that you can watch prime Mike Trout and prime Shohei Ohtani. And then there's all these young players that are lighting the world of baseball on fire. Julio Rodriguez at the front of the line. Bobby Witt Jr., Jordan Walker. A lot of young, fun players that if you get a kid to see them and grow up watching their entire career, they'll be a fan for life. And that's magical in its own way. So appreciate our veteran players, especially the guys that I think will be in Cooperstown one day. So go see Zach Greinke pitch. Go see Clayton Kershaw pitch. Go watch Miguel Cabrera hit. You're not going to regret it. Baseball is a beautiful sport because no matter what generation you land in when you flip open the book, there's always going to be great players at different stages of their career. And getting to see guys that are at the end, like Greinke and Verlander and Cabrera, versus getting to see guys that are just starting out, and Julio Rodriguez and Bobby Witt. Then there's the guys that are right in the middle. And if you get your kids to see Mookie Betts or Mike Trout when they're still doing their amazing career things as an everyday player, there's nothing like it. I've went to many games specifically to watch somebody new play that I thought was great. And I've never once been disappointed. Whether it's a defensive play, a home run, a pitch that I don't know how they didn't hit, or a pitch that I don't understand how they threw, I've always appreciated a great veteran ball player. And I think there's appreciation in that now with the new rules. Getting to see these pitchers work quickly, getting to see these batters in a shift-free environment. There's just so many possibilities and so many runs to be scored and prevented. How can you not be romantic about baseball? I appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. It means the world to me. You can follow me on Twitter at DominicMana44, where I will be retweeting all the solo home runs I see with the hashtag SoloShotSwag. Thanks to the amazing website OnlyHomers.com. I will be tallying up the amount of solo home runs hit in baseball every single week using their resource and updating the graphic there below. So far, there have been 146 solo home runs hit. It's only been a week and some change now. I expect that number to continue to grow, as I expect the following for this podcast to continue to be growing and great. Appreciate you guys.